In this very first lecture, we'll get acquainted with the fundamental principles of Islamic finance and banking, particularly Islamic finance. So Islamic finance has become a very common term in last 2 decades in our country, and very trending term in last 4 or 5 years in our country. But the starting of this Islamic finance and Islamic banking has started more than 50 years ago. And in some countries, Islamic finance is being practiced for a number of decades. So those countries are Qatar, those countries include Kuwait, those countries include Malaysia, this country. So what are the principles which guide the Islamic finance, or these are essential to know, which guide the Islamic finance. But before knowing the Islamic finance principles, let's get excited with some facts and figure of the overall Islamic finance industry. Firstly, in a global area, and secondly, in our own country. So according to the Islamic Financial Services Board report, IFSB, their acronym, they have reported as per 2019 second quarter. You understand that in that time, second quarter of 2019, COVID-19 has started, or COVID-19 has started to grow. So in that time, this statistics was reported based on the figures available during that time. So they reported that total Islamic finance universe, its market value is being estimated on that time is $2.44 trillion. So when we mean the Islamic finance universe, it includes a number of things like the conventional finance. So in conventional finance, we have the conventional banking. So in the Islamic finance universe, we have the Islamic banking. So total Islamic banking, then the Islamic capital market, then the Islamic insurance. I mentioned it earlier, Takaful. So Takaful is Islamic insurance. These three subsectors of Islamic finance universe, in aggregate, their value, you can think of the asset size or the investment of these institutions or the industry has estimated globally $2.44 trillion. So if you have the past numbers and if you have the comparative numbers, you can understand that how significantly it has been growing over the years. And you see a breakdown of the assets of these three subsectors of Islamic finance universe. So you see the Islamic banking assets, Islamic banking is dominating in the Islamic finance universe. So how it is dominating? Because the asset of Islamic banking is at least 3 times higher, close to 3 times of the Islamic capital market. So the total asset size, or the total asset held by Islamic banking companies, was reported $1.7 trillion. Where is Islamic capital market capitalization? This worth is 645.7 billion USD as of second quarter 2019. And you can see that the contribution of Takaful Islamic insurance is relatively low compared to the Islamic banking and also Islamic capital market, only $27.07 billion. And there is another fact that it has been observed that Islamic finance industry had been growing in double-digit growth rate before 2019. And in 2019, it was reported that the growth rate is 11.4%. Let me make correction in previous slide. I mentioned that in second quarter 2019, COVID-19 started to grow. I was wrong. It was second quarter of 2020. That means these figures are of before the starting of COVID-19. So before 2019, or in 2019, it was reported that the growth rate of Islamic finance industry, according to S&P Global Rating Company, 11.4%. You see, this is a double-digit growth rate, and when something grows at a double-digit growth rate, it is very encouraging for the people who are part of that industry or who are part of that sector. But S&P expected, because of the penetration of COVID-19 in the total financial industry and the countries where Islamic finance is being practiced, they expect that the growth of Islamic finance industry will come down to a single-digit growth rate, and it will be between a low and mid single-digit growth rate in 2020-21. So right now we are in the ending of 2021. So you can have a check that in 2021, at which rate Islamic finance industry has grown. So that is one question from this fact. So it was expected that it would grow at a low to mid single-digit growth. So what I mentioned before the starting of the class, that COVID-19 has opened our eyes, and COVID-19 has provided us the avenue for rethinking the features of the conventional finance, because we have found that conventional finance cannot solve many of the problems in our world, which need to be solved and which need to be checked in a more holistic way, in a more socialistic way, in a way which does not solely concentrate on the profit. So COVID-19 has given us the opportunity to think of how Islamic finance principles can be followed to address the need of the mass people, to address the need of the underprivileged people, how Islamic finance services can be used, or how Islamic finance principled investment can be used to serve the need of marginalized people. So Islamic finance has a very big role, which were not explored before the COVID-19, but COVID-19 has opened our eyes to think of the features inherent in the Islamic finance. And also it has given us the opportunity to think of the constraint of the conventional finance, which didn't help us to solve the problems which has been made clear with the development of the pandemic over time. And it is also being thought that the features or the solutions which have been made possible by the new inventions, the robo-advisory services are being used in the finance industry to provide the financial services to the service recipient. So Islamic finance is also trying to include the advantage of the robo-advisory services to provide more efficient, more costless services by adopting the technologies which are being integrated in the financial industry. So you probably have heard that the software, not the software, investment companies in particular, investment companies are looking for engineers which can solve the, or which can design, who can design a software-based investment so that there will be no requirement of including or employing a physical investment advisor. So investment companies are nowadays using these technologies to serve the need of the customer. So Islamic finance is also participating in this race, and they are also using the benefits which have been made possible by the advent of the financial technology, popularly known as fintech. And for this purpose, to serve the need of marginalized people, underserved people, unbanked people, there should be coordination. There should be coordination between and among the stakeholders who are directly or indirectly influenced by this kind of problems, what we mentioned previously. And if these problems are not addressed, we will be able to achieve the growth, but the growth will not be sustainable. And you know that SDG has started to inspire us that focus on sustainable growth, not focus on growth merely. So it has been being emphasized in the financial industry that if we think of the sustainable growth, Islamic finance has a big role, which might not be played by the conventional finance. And it is an estimate by several entities. It is estimate for the Islamic finance that it will be a $2.4 trillion industry, and we mentioned it 2.44 trillion in second quarter 19. But before 2019, it was estimated that it is going to be a 2.4 trillion industry. So you see that there is a breakdown of the Islamic finance industry, which includes a separate space for banking asset, separate space for shukuk, separate space for takaful, and separate space for funds. You see the dominance of the banking asset from this column graph, that Islamic banking assets are growing significantly over these 5 years, and 2019 figure is estimated figure. And you see that the estimated growth of Islamic banking industry is a good number, but for the shukuk, you see that how big the space is in 2019 relative to the space in 2018. So the growth of shukuk in the world has been estimated a very significant number. And you see in our country, in last year, 2020 December, the total financial industry has got a momentum when the government issued Islamic shukuk or Islamic bond or shukuk for government projects. And for last couple of months, there has been a good number of discussions of shukuk, which was issued by the Beximco. And in coming years and also coming months, it is expected that you will see that shukuk is being used by many companies to source their financing. And it is still not a common financing product in our country, but if you look at the Middle East countries and also some other countries where Islamic finance is being practiced, not only in Muslim countries, but also in non-Muslim countries, you'll see that shukuk is being used, and the growth of shukuk is a very remarkable in other countries where Islamic finance is being practiced. And let's look at some facts for our country, Bangladesh, that in which position Bangladesh is standing in terms of the Islamic finance and banking. So there is Islamic Finance News Services, which is a Malaysia-based Malaysia-based news, which provides the news on Islamic finance. And they have reported that compared to earlier years, in recent years, Islamic finance, Islamic banks in particular, have achieved a very stronger position. And how can we understand that how Islamic banks have positioned in a very stronger position? So there are some supporting evidence. So one evidence is that out of all general activities which are conducted in Bangladesh, at least one third of all general banking activities in Bangladesh is now being conducted through Islamic banks. And in terms of total deposits, Islamic banks in Bangladesh is holding 25.04% of total bank deposit. In terms of investment, it is close to 25%. I mean, 1/4 of total investment is being handled, being invested by the Islamic banks. And out of the remittances which are being received in Bangladesh, 27.2% remittance is handled by the Islamic banks. So you see, this is not an ignorable percentage. This is a significant percentage, and this is the reason. And this is the reason that why Islamic finance is being discussed in newspapers, in discussion, in conversation, or why people are rethinking to switch their employment from conventional banks to Islamic banks. So you see, when one sub-industry or one industry or one institution is growing, it creates ample opportunities for its own employees and also for the new employees. And institution or industry which are in matured stage, they also provide benefit but their benefits to be given to their employees and also their customers is expected to be lower, slightly lower or lower than the industry which is growing at a very significant rate. So we have nowadays we have more than 10 Islamic banks so far I can recall, but I don't have the exact number right now. We have Islamic banks from different facets. Some banks started their operation as Islamic banks in our country, like Islamic Bank Bangladesh Limited or Al Araf Islamic Bank. They are full-fledged Islamic banks. Some banks have transformed, some banks have converted their conventional banking operation to Islamic banking operation. So they have changed their business from conventional to Islamic. So this is another facet. There is another facet which how Islamic banks or Islamic banking services are growing in our country. That facet is some banks have opened their Islamic banking division or Islamic banking branches for providing Islamic banking services. So there are three facets. So if you look at the Bangladesh Bank guideline for Islamic conducting Islamic banks, you will see that for these three facets, for these three type of institutions, the guidelines are distinctive. So it is not the same that when you are doing conventional banking practices, you have to follow the same rules like another institution which has started their operation as an Islamic bank. So their guidelines, I mean their overall guideline is a single guideline, but the rules applicable for different facets or different type of institution is different based on how they have planned to start their Islamic banking services, whether they want to start Islamic banks new, or they want to convert their conventional banking services to Islamic banking services, or they want to just simply introduce Islamic banking division. So you'll see, and you will see the guideline later of this course to know that what are the rules need to be followed by the sponsors of these institutions. Okay, there is another encouraging number which is reported by Islamic Finance Country Index, where Bangladesh position was 8th before 10th before 2019, but in 2019 Bangladesh position in Islamic finance has moved to 8th in 2019 from 10th position. And it has been reported in the Islamic finance news that Islamic banks in Bangladesh are no longer offering services in a traditional form. Rather, they are quickly adopting the latest form of technologies which have been made possible by the fourth industrial revolution, and their growth of agent banking network and their growth of providing services through financial technology is very encouraging. And there is another news which is also inspiring for all of us who are interested in Islamic finance and banking, that is Islamic Bank Bangladesh Limited, which is a leader not only in Islamic banking companies, but also in overall banking industry. It has it recorded 11.54 billion amount of deposits in 2020, when at the same time when a number of banks have experienced the deposit outflow, negative growth of deposits due to spread of COVID-19. But Islamic Bank Bangladesh Limited IBBL set a milestone by recording a deposit of $11.54 billion. In terms of Bangladesh Taka, it is 1 trillion. And this is the first time in the overall commercial banking industry history in Bangladesh. So I already have mentioned that overall Islamic finance has 25% share in the Islamic in the overall banking industry. And in our country, as like other countries, the contribution of Islamic capital market and the contribution of Takaful insurance is not a very high percentage like the Islamic banks. But overall, out of the total customers, Islamic banking customers who are interested to take the services of from the Islamic banks, out of those customers, 35% customers are being served by Bangladesh. 35% of banking customers in the world who want to take services from Islamic banks, 35% customers are being served by the Islamic banks operating in Bangladesh. So you can understand that in terms of the customers base, how big the Bangladesh market is for the Islamic banks. So this is one of the reasons why many banks want to convert their conventional banks to Islamic banks, and also want to start operation as Islamic banks. And you have seen some a number of fourth generation bank has started their operation as Islamic banks rather than being a conventional bank. So this is one of the reasons from the perspective of customer base. Remember, there are some regulatory reasons which we will mention later, not in this class, but in other classes. So this is a good reason that your customer base is a very good, significant number of customer base is there in our country, and it is expected to grow at a certain percentage for different reasons. That's why this is a good industry to enter and to play. That's why the interested sponsors for operating Islamic banks and for introducing Islamic banks is high in our country. Okay, so from this number you have understood that how important Bangladesh is, or how significant Bangladesh is in the overall Islamic finance market in the world. And you see that in terms of financial inclusion, Bangladesh is doing very good, and it has set examples for many countries, also for some developed countries which failed to achieve the financial inclusion for some of their states or for some of their regions. So they want to learn from Bangladesh, and that financial inclusion practices or the steps which have been taken by all the stakeholders in our country for financial inclusion. And there is a role of Islamic finance and there is also responsibility of Islamic finance to achieve the financial inclusion. And conventional bank is traditionally for the rich people and for the people who have the collateral, who have a worthy asset, and conventional finance is being targeted for those people. But Islamic banks are not targeted for such people. Islamic finance, their target, the target customers of Islamic banking or Islamic finance is those people who need money and who are in a real need of money. And it is not necessary that they need to have collateral, they need to have a worthy asset. These are not very necessary characteristics in Islamic banks. So you see that financial inclusion is a very integral part of Islamic banking. And you will see that how it has been made possible by Islamic banking to avoid the need for taking collateral, taking high worth of collateral from the customer. So before going to the principles of Islamic finance and banking, let's think of that from where Islamic finance and banking is sourced or is being guided. So remember two things, I would say two myths. And what are the two myths and what are the two facts? So number one myth is that Islamic finance is finance which is only related to the Islam religion, or the Riva. Riva has been restricted only by the religion Islam. Other religions have not restricted taking riba. This is number one myth. So what is the fact? The fact is that if you see or if you have a look on the guiding source of other religions, including Islam, you will see a number of religions, including Islam, have restricted the taking and payment of riba, acceptance and payment of riba. Have you understood the number one myth?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Number two myth. Number two myth is that a number of people believe that Islamic finance is being practiced by Muslim countries, and the services of Islamic finance is only for the Muslim people. That means who have accepted the religion as Islam. This is number two myth. So what is the fact? The fact is that Islamic finance is not only for the Muslim countries. There is no need in the Islamic finance and banking that you must be a Muslim to start the practicing of Islamic finance and banking. So anyone from any religion can start offering Islamic finance and banking services. But the condition is that they have the knowledge, they know that how Islamic finance and banking is operated, how it is being offered. Am I clear? then a good number of non-Muslim countries are practicing, and they have presence of a number of finance and banking institutions which provide the Islamic finance and banking services. Have you got the myths and facts of two things? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, how can you get the evidence? You can get the evidence if you read the text. If you read the text, you will see the evidence that in which part of which religion has restricted the use of riba. So remember, I showed a reference text. If you do not have the text, or if you do not like to visit the text, please visit the web page, visit the website and search that which religions have restricted the use of riba. So you'll see the reference from Quran first. You'll see the reference from Bible. You will see the reference from Taurat. You will see the reference from reference from guidance of other religions. Okay, so you know that people, followers of the religion over time have started to disobey their guidance of religion. So, and they also have changed the guidance or the rulings of their religions by themselves, ignoring the instruction of God. But Islam is the only religion which has kept the instruction of the Creator that Riva is forbidden, this instruction intact. But there might be a time that Muslims have started to believe that Islam has permitted the uses of riba. So other religions which are not giving the permission, which are giving permission, understand that they are not referring the original source. They have transformed, they have changed, they have changed their guidance by themselves. But originally, their religion forbid the use of riba. Okay, okay. Let's look at what God has specifically mentioned in Quran regarding the prohibition of riba. So this is the number one principle that in Islamic finance, that riba is forbidden. Riba is forbidden. There is no scope to accept or to pay riba for the use of money. So what is riba? Riba is anything that is in excess of the money being lent or being borrowed. Excess of amount of money which has been borrowed or which has been lent. And there is another interesting definition of riba, that any loan which attracts benefit is riba. It is not necessarily that amount will be a monetary amount. If you have given a loan to someone and you want that in exchange of making repayment of the loan, the borrower will also give you, say, one vehicle, that will also be part of the riba. Am I clear to you? Anything that attracts any benefit that attracts the loan is riba. Okay. Okay, so you'll see a number of ways to define the riba over time. So what God has specifically mentioned in Quran the number one source of Sharia in Islam. So God has permitted trade and forbidden interest. So this is the number one or very commonly cited reference of forbidding riba. So God has permitted to do business, to make purchase, to make selling, but there is no way that you will accept or pay interest by using the medium of exchange. So medium of exchange cannot be used for taking benefit. But what can you do? You can use the medium of exchange to make business, to make trade. So we'll try to see some counter and some supportive reason why riba is forbidden or why riba is rejected in Islam. Okay. So about the reward of accepting or paying interest, what God has mentioned. It is mentioned that when you accept riba, riba receiver feel that it is a blessing. It is a kind of benefit. But God has mentioned that when you accept riba, the blessings will be, you will get deprived from the blessings. You will get deprived of the blessings. But if you give the charity, you probably have heard that there is a term that called the Hasan, where you give loan and you take no repayment. So that is a very special form and also part of charity. So when you do the task of charity, your benefits or your reward will be multiple, quadrupled, or many times. It is possible for the God to give multiple time benefit. Okay, so what are the fundamental reason for prohibition of riba? One thing is that when I already mentioned one reason that it is being mentioned in the economics text that riba and or interest is a reward for the money, for the usage of money. And it is also, it has also been mentioned that riba is the benefit, or riba is the reward of using capital. But you see that labor accept wages and salaries. So labor provides some value. Labor provides some value. For providing such value, labor accepts wages or salaries, and it is, there is no issue of confusion. And when someone provides capital, remember there is a very specific definition of capital in economics, that capital includes machineries which stimulate or which help the production work to continue. So capital is not, capital has not been mentioned that capital is a kind of money, but it has been mentioned that capital includes machineries, these things like machineries which are being used for the production. So there is a risk when you employ this kind of capital that the production might not work as planned, or production might not be sold as expected. So for that capital, you expect profit, and that is the reward for employing the capital, and that is also reward for the entrepreneur who has employed the capital. And business also use the land, and for the land, taking rental income is also permitted. So these are some tangible value for machineries, for labor, for land, buildings. All these have some tangible value, and that's why the income or the rental or the profit or the wage, these are acceptable. But it has been mentioned that when someone is giving money, that money cannot be directly used for the production. That money has been invented for the purpose of medium of exchange. That money has not been used for the purpose of production, for the purpose of creating value, for the purpose of creating products and or offering the services. Money has been created only for the purpose of medium of exchange or storing of value, these purposes. But when the interest is accepted or interest is paid by the people, money is no longer considered as a medium of exchange. Money is considered as an asset. Money is being considered as an asset. But you see, when you have a money, you have a, for example, 100 taka note, that money has no productivity. That money will not give you anything unless you buy something like land or buy some machineries or buy some labor with that money. So money itself has no value. You have to purchase something. You have to purchase some, I mean, you cannot directly use the money in the production process. You have to buy something like land, or you have to buy some labor, pay their wages, and you have to buy capital. In that way, they can be used. But currency note, coin, this cannot be used directly in the production process. So in that purpose, that money is not, when money is taking benefit in terms of interest, that I have given money and I am taking interest as a reward, I have not used or I have not employed any productivity. So that's why it has been discouraged to take any return for the purpose of using money. But you see, say for example, you have purchased a bus, for example. You have purchased a bus, you are the owner. So you have given the bus as a lease to someone, and monthly you are accepting some rental payment for the user of the bus. That is strictly acceptable. That is strictly acceptable. You are taking reward for the purpose of employing capital. But if you give money directly to that person instead of giving bus to the that person, in that case, if you want the money back and you take some extra, in that case it will be considered as interest. So it has been mentioned that when interest is accepted as a return for using money, that interest is a reward, but it has no relation with the productivity. It has no relation with the effort, because money cannot give any effort directly. So there will be a number of counter arguments from yourself and also from myself, because you know that I am from a conventional finance. and I also have achieved a professional degree, which is being considered a very passport to the global investment industry. So interest has a very big space in our knowledge, and interest has a very big space in our learning, and also has a very big space in our day-to-day life usage. But we have to understand, I will give you a number of arguments in every day to solidify our learning. Okay, so let's proceed. So there are a number of justifications have been provided for the ban on Riva. So number one has been pointed out here is that usury as interest or excessive interest. So there are some people who argue that Quran has forbidden the acceptance or payment of those interest which is excessive. So how excessive it is? I have mentioned that it is a belief of some people. It is not the guidance of the Quran. So say microfinance. Once upon a time when there was no microfinance, there was a lender. There was a lender in every village or every area. So those lenders are still now exist. So those lenders used to give money to people who need money in exchange of 100% interest payment, or 400% interest payment, or 500% interest payment. So when microfinance has entered into the market, in the financial market, they have brought down the interest rate to 30%, 35%. So you know the very reason why they charge 35, 40, 30 instead of 5.9 or 6.9. So the answer is that they accept no collateral. They require no collateral from the borrower. That is the reason. But the instruction from the Quran is that anything extra over the loan is interest. So there is no space for making flexibility that 100% interest or 80% interest is riba and 1% interest is permitted, or 9% interest is permitted. There is no space for that. Okay, so we have understood the point. But the thing is that what has been mentioned by Tantawi position. So there is a paper which has discussed on it in a very detail. Let me share the story in a very brief way. That Tantawi was a principal of Al-Azhar University. You probably have heard about it in Cairo. So once upon a time, probably in 1970s or 1980s, in that time, Tantawi mentioned that the interest paid by the conventional bank is indifferent from the profit paid by the Islamic banks. So what was Tantawi's argument? Tantawi's argument is not different from the belief or the argument of a number of Muslims who accept or who take the interest income. So Tantawi was saying that Quran has restricted the use of riba but permitted the business. So what conventional banks are doing? Conventional banks are accepting the people's money, depositors' money, and conventional banks are using that money for the purpose of doing business, or sometimes they are doing business directly, and it is very unlikely for the conventional banks to make business directly. They can do it if they engage in capital market, but in other market, it is very unlikely that they engage directly in business. Okay, so what they do, they provide loan to the businessmen. So actually they are indirectly helping businessmen to do business. So as they are assisting businessmen to do business, they are actually doing businesses. So there is no difference. They are taking profit by helping someone to do business, and that profit or that interest they are taking, conventional banks are part of the business profit earned by the businessman. So that kind of argument from the principal of Al Azhar University during that time has had created a very noise during that time because it was rejected by a number of scholars during that time. So you understand the reason that by this kind of argument, it cannot be acceptable. When you are doing business, you have to do business directly. You see that, okay, they are doing business. Who are doing business? The borrower who had taken loan from the banks, conventional banks. But you see that some businesses will make loss, but conventional banks will pay no heed to their loss. The borrowers will be responsible for making the repayment clear to the lenders. So Tanta's position was rejected later, and the decree was issued against Tanta's position. But as he was in a very dominating position, it encouraged many people for accepting interest income. Okay, redistributive loss makers carry interest burden. I just have mentioned that if you are a loss maker, you cannot avoid the interest burden when it is an interest contract. And when someone is accepting interest payment from the borrower, he is sharing no risk. He is avoiding total risk, and he has transferred the total risk to the borrower. So Islam does not encourage people to become the risk avoider. Islam does not encourage people to become risk avoider. Islam does not encourage people to sleep at home and receive interest income monthly in their bank account by keeping some money invested in interest-bearing instruments. Rather, Islam encourages people to engage in business, do trading, accept risk, make loss, make profit, and get some net profit. And when you are transferring total risk to the borrower, in that case, the risk has become asymmetric. You are not, the total risk is borne by the borrower, and you are accepting no risk. So there is a kind of asymmetric distribution of risk. And I already have mentioned making money from money is unjust in Islam. And Islam has given us permission that use the real asset to generate income. Do not use the monetary asset. Do not use the monetary asset to get income. So monetary asset includes what? Monetary asset includes cash, currency, coin, and anything which look like coin. And which assets are real asset? real asset. Real assets are tangible asset, and real asset also includes the intangible asset. But real assets have some inherent value. Real assets have some inherent value, but monetary assets has no inherent value. So monetary asset has some value which are kind of value which has been created by the government by the decree. When government has provided the decree that I will be responsible for paying this amount of dollar of the person who will hold this note, for such kind of instruction, that paper has become valuable. Otherwise that paper does not have no value itself. So it has been mentioned that commonly it is mentioned that time value of money is only the reason why we should accept the interest, and we cannot avoid the interest. But there is a number of arguments which will mention over time, and you can also explore that the time value of money can be compensated by making profit, by making business profit. Time value of money, sometimes you will see that time value of money, when the inflation is decreasing, when the inflation decreases, money value increases. So but you continue to accept interest income. So in that case, actually you are not counting as a interest income as compensation for time value of money. And these are some conventional theories for the interest, and you are very familiar that why interest is a part of finance, why interest should be taken. And these are a very common reason which are argued by the conventional finance for the interest, acceptability of interest. And one point I like to highlight from the implications for modern finance, that is how interest has become very integrated in modern finance, that we think of that interest in real terms and nominal terms. So we think of how much real interest income we are accepting or we are getting. If we see that our real interest income is negative, we feel we are loser. So we try to accept, or we try to achieve, or we try to earn a real interest in a positive real interest income on our invested money. So first principle, you have got that the prohibition of riba. Second principle is that Islam has strictly discouraged the presence of grahar, or the uncertainty. Remember, uncertainty is different from risk. Risk is possible to calculate. Risk can be estimated. Risk can be minimized. But when there is uncertainty, there is no probability for calculating uncertainty. There is no number to calculate the uncertainty. So Islam does not encourage the acceptance of uncertainty in any financial contract. For example, one reason why casino is prohibited is the presence of sheer amount of uncertainty in this dealing. Why lottery is rejected by Islam is that there is a sheer volume of uncertainty. You see that if you calculate the probability of winning in a lottery, that percentage is very, very, very low, and it invites a number of problems, a number of problems in the individual life, in the social life, and in also in the legal situation or law and control situation of a country, when people embrace with a number of uncertainties. You probably have seen that the recent events in our country who have offered people to accept their dealings in exchange for a hefty amount of profit. You probably have heard about the e-valley and Orange, this e-commerce companies which provided a number of offerings to the people. But if you look at their offer, you will have a number of questions that there is a sheer amount of uncertainty in their contract. They have no answer. So these things are strictly forbidden in Islam. So you have got the second principle, that uncertainty or gaharar is to be eliminated from the financial contract. And there is a third principle, that is the participatory finance. Islam encourages people to participate together in the financing. So how can one participate? Two common financial products in Islam, very common buzzword in Islamic finance is mudaraba and musharaka. So in mudaraba, how partnership is formed, one entity offer their money and another entity offers their their lever or their knowledge or their skill or their management. So when they achieve profit or when they make profit, they share the profit based on a ratio, not necessarily based on the monetary value of their capital. But when there is a loss, the loss will be borne by the Rabal Mal. Rabal Mal is the person who is providing the money or who is providing the capital. And Mudarib is the person who is sharing the management and labor, and he will bear no loss. Rather, he will get no compensation for the management and labor he employed for doing the enterprise. And Musharaka is extremely similar with the partnership business which we do traditionally, but there are some distinctive features in Musharaka where the losses will be shared as a proportion of the capital contribution, but the profit will be shared in any ratio. It can be in a ratio of contributed capital, or it can be also in a ratio of in which they have made agreed. Okay, you probably have heard about the terms risk aversion, risk seeking, and risk sharing. So conventional finance has encouraged us to believe that risk aversion is the common tendency of the people, and we also exhibit risk aversion. But there are a number of people who are risk seeking. Yeah, I just have mentioned the people who purchase the lottery, who purchase the e-valley, or who invest in the e-orange. So what is the reason? Are those people risk averse? Really no, they are the risk seeking people. That's why they are accepting more risk. But Islam is not encouraging either risk aversion or risk seeking. Islam is encouraging us to become risk sharing, to practice the risk sharing, share risk with other people, share risk with the mudarib, or share risk with the rabal mal, and share the liabilities together. So Islam encourages us to practice the finance as a responsible finance. So Islam is dealt with real economic activity in one side, but in addition to that, Islam encourages us to become or to follow the moral economic activities. Say, for example, I have mentioned that you can engage in business of tangible and intangible assets through Islamic finance. Say you can take loan, you can take investment for purchasing musharaka, diminishing musharaka from the Islamic bank to purchase an apartment. That is a very tangible asset. Okay. But at the same time, you can also purchase you can also take investment money from the Islamic bank to purchase or to make investment in your mango trees, or a mango garden where there is no mango still right now. So you have no tangible asset right now. You have a mango tree, so okay, good. But if there is no mango, your mango garden has no value. But based on that intangibility of the real fruits in the mango garden, you can accept the investment. But that is based on there is also uncertainties, so not uncertainty, there is also risk that how many mangoes will be produced there, or how many mangoes will be good there finally. So Islam encourages those. But sometimes you probably have heard about the derivative, financial derivatives. There is a debate that whether derivative is acceptable in Islamic finance or not acceptable, because derivative has no risk limit. So a significant amount of risk is to be borne by the derivative users. So in that case, though that is related to real economic activity, but Islam discourages to accept a sheer amount of uncertainty. See, at the same time, how Islam helps us to become moral. So like conventional finance, you can also take the investment from the Islamic finance companies or Islamic banking companies to make investment in a 5-star hotel. Okay. But you see, when you take the investment from the Islamic finance and Islamic finance or Islamic banking companies, what Islamic banks have to make sure that that 5-star hotel does not sell any beer. So you see, that is very unlikely. That is very difficult for Islamic banks to make sure. So you see that when we are practicing Islamic finance and banking, we are limiting ourselves to avoid the haram activities. So that is also helping us to become moral, to become a good human being. So that is not possible. There is no restriction in the conventional finance. In conventional finance, you can take money from for whatever the purpose is. If you want to take the money to purchase alcohol, conventional finance will not discourage you, or conventional finance will not restrict you. I'm not thinking of the environment of Bangladesh. I'm thinking of the global environment. In any country, it is permissible. Okay, but wherever you are, Islamic finance and banking will not give you the money to purchase the alcohol. So these are some moral activities which is encouraged by the Islamic finance through the responsible finance. Okay, so let me stop the class here for today.